Hi, everyone. Sorry about those technical difficulties that we ran into. This is Adam Lang from Netradyne coming to you with Welcome to the Green Zone. Today, I have a couple of guests with me that are well known in the trucking safety community and safety in general. So I'd like to introduce both Michael Lasko and Lucas Mowrey to the show. So Michael, could you start out?
Sure, Adam, thank you. I appreciate you asking me to be on today. I'm Michael Lasko. I'm the Assistant General Manager and Vice President at Boyle Transportation. And I am also the immediate past chair of the TCA Safety and Security Division.
Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Lucas, how about you?
Thanks, Adam. Lucas Mowrey with Grand Island Express and the current Safety and Security Chairman.
Excellent. And, being friends with you guys for many, many years in trucking, we've shared many safety stories, many safety ideas, and we always say there's no secrets in safety. And so for our viewers who know me, I did work for a very excellent trucking company, Helver Lines, for 10 years as their chief risk officer. That's where we met at industry events and captive insurance meetings. But for those of you that know me and respect what I've done in the industry in terms of safety, both of these gentlemen have taught me more than most people have forgotten. So please extend that courtesy to them as well. It's nice to see the TCA Safety and Security Committee has folks like yourselves serving on it. And there's a lot of other great folks that eventually I'd like to pull on this show as well. Customers are not from Netradyne. It doesn't matter. It's good safety content. So we're going to kick things off right off the bat. Michael, I want to start with you. So what is the TCA Safety Committee and what does it do?
Yeah, so great question. It's a group of safety directors, anybody that has a responsibility for safety within their organization that attend the Safety and Security Division meeting. So there's a group of us, and it's actually a growing group. I want to say, Lucas, what we got, 10 or so members currently. And we meet periodically throughout the year, usually at a minimum of once a month, and we discuss what's going on in the industry, whether it's regulatory changes or potential new regulations or legislation that's coming out, any kind of hot button topics that arise. And we kind of try to strategize how we can, provide meaningful content to attendees of the Safety and Security Division meeting that usually occurs usually in June every year. So it's kind of an ongoing thing where, all of us here or that are involved are responsible for safety and trucking at their organization. But they're also, in most cases, highly involved in other aspects of safety in the industry. So we try to capitalize on that knowledge base and create meaningful content, that delivers things that, if you attend the conference, you go home with something that's going to benefit both you and your company. And that's kind of the goal in what we do.
I've heard that multiple times. Anytime I would go to a conference, my boss would always tell me, bring back at least one good idea and it's worthwhile. And I mean, in my experience, you bring back a handful or a dozen good ideas from these TCA meetings, safety meeting particularly, which I'll throw out a plug. In 2026, it's June 7th through the 9th in Oklahoma City. So welcome to Oklahoma for the first time, and first time that I know of that they've had the meeting there. But just check it out on truckload.org if you're interested. So Lucas, I'm going to kick something over to you here. Could you tell me about any recent success stories or initiatives that the TCA Safety Committee is proud of? Anything that's going on in your general sphere of influence, things that you guys are talking about addressing, maybe talking about upcoming content for the next safety conference?
Our planning meeting's coming up in December.
Okay.
And that's when the minds that Michael was talking about that make up the committee will get together and spitfire ideas at each other and come up with content for next year's safety and security meeting. It's a 2-day event. We take it very seriously and list out a lot of topics and then narrow it down from there for what would be best for all sizes of fleets.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds great. So, I mean, there's a bunch of people getting together from the truckload industry. I mean, it's Truckload Carriers Association, so it's got to be truckload members, right? That kind of throw out ideas and say, hey, this is what I'm hearing about. Maybe it's cargo theft, and maybe we want to do a breakout session on that, or maybe we want to talk about it in our general sessions. I know that roundtables are always a really good part of that meeting. And I would think, but Lucas, give me your thoughts. Are we still going to have those roundtable discussions at this next year's TCA meeting?
Yes, definitely. The roundtables will be one of the options available. Most likely there will be 2 roundtable sessions. If we continue the way we have in the past years, those are the best turnout sessions of the deal.
I would agree.
And Adam, I'll tag on to that. For anybody that hasn't attended one of these roundtables, it's really cool the way that these unfold. And it's a group of folks, and there's some vendors in the room. It's mostly carriers. And you kind of get the conversation started with, hey, there's this hot button topic out there, and we'll throw it out on the table. And these meetings really quickly take a life of their own, because everybody's bringing to this roundtable some issue or concern or experience that they've had at their carrier, and instantly 10 other people in the room, hey, I had the same problem, and this is what I did to fix it. And then hey, I tried that and it worked for a little bit, but we found this way to fix this problem was a better solution. And everybody kind of gains a lot out of that, because, we talk a lot about different size fleets, and, there might be maybe a false, kind of conception that, hey, it's a small fleet. Well, the stuff that the big fleet guys deal with, it's not the same thing, and it's different. Well, actually, it really is. Maybe the way that you go about solving it might look a little different, but the problem still exists for whether you're a small fleet or a large fleet. And that's true whether we're talking about lawsuit abuse or technology or truck parking, any of these like real hot button topics. So roundtable, I'm a huge fan of those, and those usually get the most praise in the post conference surveys that folks that attend that, and that I got more out of that roundtable than I did out of any other conference I've been to. And that's a pretty common statement coming out of those. So yeah, those are going to continue. We're always looking for ways to kind of add to it and, breathe a little bit, new energy into them. But I feel like they have a life of their own already at this point.
I really like that, Michael, and I would agree. And one interesting thing about the roundtables that I learned as now a vendor versus someone that works for a trucking company, the vendors, if they come in, sit on the periphery. They have to sit outside of that circle, and the truckload members sit in the middle of the circle. And vendors can comment and raise their hands and stuff, but we don't want it to be a sales session. We want to hear the problems, and it's just great for some folks to just sit back and take it all in and hear that. I don't care if you're a 15,000 truck fleet or a 50 truck fleet, these issues hit all of us severely. So I think it's great content. So Lucas, bouncing back to you, who would we talk to if, like, let's say I'm a truckload carrier and I'm involved in the TCA, or maybe I want to become a member of the TCA. Like, let's say I walk into one of these conferences, who should I look for to talk to about becoming a member of the safety committee at TCA?
One of the current safety committee members or one of the TCA staff would be who I would talk to. I talked to one of the members and had a discussion with them and asked them what I could do to be more involved. And that person was you, Adam, at that point in time. And
right.
You took me to the committee as a recommendation, and then the committee decides on who they're going to add that year to the committee.
Yeah, and I can remember that process. I also remember, I can't remember how I got involved. I just remember being asked by Dave Heller. Dave, you're on. Thank you. He just asked if I could help out in a roundtable session. And here I was, a green safety guy, and he got me involved. And that's the other cool thing about these meetings that I'll throw out there. Like, if you're a new member or a first-time attendee, people are going to come up to you and talk. So be ready to talk, and don't be afraid. Put yourself out there. Come with your questions. It's a great time, and it's a lot of fun too. Safety isn't dry and boring. It's exciting, and we have a lot of good times together. I mean, we work hard, we play hard. So yeah, I would second what you're saying right there. So coming up to this, Mike, do you know if there's any new formats or session types planned for maybe the annual TCA meeting or the 2026 safety meeting? Are we going to see, like, I guess, any change in format or anything? I know the committee meeting hasn't happened yet, but can you tease anything out?
Well, again, to your point, the meeting hasn't happened yet. That's scheduled early in December. So yeah, but look, I think that this committee has done an outstanding job over the last 10 years that I've been involved with, 10 plus years, actually. I'm getting old. That I've been involved with TCA. This committee has done an outstanding job of just making sure that there's relevant, engaging content. So I think it's safe to take it to the bank that that's going to be what you get next year as well. These planning meetings that we have, we go to the TCA headquarters in Virginia, Alexandria, and as Lucas said, we're there for 2 days, and it's sometimes quite comical. Sometimes it's there's a lot of tension in the room. Sometimes we have to break Garth Pitzel and Dean Newell up. They start wrestling in the corner. But there's a lot of good give and take and back and forth amongst all the folks on this committee, because we want to make sure that we're not giving you fluff. There's plenty of conferences out there that just kind of give you boilerplate, entry level kind of safety talk. And I think TCA has done an outstanding job of making sure that it's really meaningful, relevant stuff. And I can tell you, somebody, either you or Lucas, had mentioned about, if you attend this conference, be prepared to talk to people. And I'll tell you, that is the value of this conference. I could go into details, but there are numerous times where I've been, kind of encountered an issue or, some sort of, new circumstance that I'm like, geez, how do I approach this? Instantly, I go to my list of people that I've talked to, and I'm like, I remember I talked to, Rob Mosley about this issue with, legal proceedings. Let me give him a call. And guess what? Rob takes my call, and he's helping me out with something. And it's really just a great community of people that really kind of are eager to help each other out and share knowledge and best practices. I really rant and rave about how awesome TCA is for that reason. It's really, it's been a breath of fresh air as somebody that, you're directly responsible for the safety within your fleet. It's good to know that you have a team that can support you. Even if it's through something like a trade organization like TCA.
Well, and one thing I'll say to that too, Michael, is again, I'll point out, I'm a vendor now. I don't work for a truckload carrier anymore, but the TCA treats me the same, right? Like just because I come and I sell things doesn't mean that I'm not a valued member of the TCA. In fact, it's kind of different when you're looked at as a sponsor sometimes, but the content is still very relevant. I love staying current on all the safety issues because I talk to our customers constantly, yourselves included. I talk to a lot of prospect members. I talk to just professionals in the industry, other vendors, and all of this content that we get there finds its way into those conversations. And one of the things that I'm hoping to see, or maybe you'll talk about in your committee meeting, and Lucas, I'm going to point this at you and maybe ask you a question about it, is the lack of truck parking, right? Like, we've heard this over and over and over. And I had an article out there. I can't remember what publication it was or when I wrote it, but it was about the stressors that kind of seep into a driver's mind when you're on the road. And what I noticed with a lot of the drivers I worked with was the lack of truck parking and the stress that goes along with that. When you know where you're going might not have a parking spot, if the time is ticking down, you're stuck in traffic, whatever it might be, and you got to get to your parking spot, you don't have anything reserved, it's not as simple as just pulling over and finding a parking spot. So I mean, Lucas, how does parking impact you folks at Grand Island Express, and maybe anything to shine light on that, and maybe something that you guys have done about it?
It's not just here at Grand Island Express, it's affecting the whole transportation community. And you're right, the stress is there from the driver's hours of service. They need to make deliveries in a certain amount of time according to the hours of service. And sometimes between the shippers and receivers, there isn't parking near one of them. Right. And so it does create quite the challenge for the drivers and everything. There are a few vendors out there that have kind of took it upon themselves to find parking for truck parking. Mm-hmm. And they go out and find private entities that have spaces to lease and everything that you can go out and do. And I'm hoping that some of those vendors will be there again this year.
I'm sure there will be. I can tell you that one of the worst situations I ever had to deal with as a safety professional came from a situation where a driver could not find parking and decided to park alongside an off-ramp. And I don't have to spell out what happened there. I think our audience and you guys would know what happened. But it's a real problem. Parking these rigs is needed because we need our freight, right? And our customers need it, and the consumers, we're all consumers too. We need that freight. I think if we look back at 2020 when we ran out of toilet paper and there was a rush on grocery stores to grab as much toilet paper as possible, and there were people that were charging chisel prices, I guess you could call it, where you're paying $50 for a dozen rolls of toilet paper, for God's sake. I mean, what's going on here? Imagine for a moment that happened again, and it would be magnified because we've gone through that panic before. So we need to find good, safe parking for these drivers, and they need to have confidence when they start their day, they start their shift, that they're going to be able to park somewhere. I mean, think about if someone told me, okay, you're going to do your job, and then you're going to try to when you stop for the night, you might not necessarily be able to stop until you find somewhere to park. And think about that. And not just my regular, Ford truck, but a semi truck with a trailer. I mean, again, their day doesn't end. And sometimes it doesn't end even after they park. A lot of things can happen then.
It's kind of an unfair expectation, isn't it, Adam?
Yes.
We tell drivers, hey, be safe, go out there, do the right thing, follow the rules. And as we all know, trucking is one of the most regulated industries in the country.
Yeah.
And there's more rules than, who can count, right? But then when it comes to something as critical as making sure that there's a safe place to park the truck so that they can get their required rest or use a bathroom facility, we kind of just, the industry, well, I shouldn't say the industry, but really society has said, well, let the drivers figure it out. And I can tell you, at Boyle Transportation, better than 80% of our incidents are related to truck congestion and parking congestion at truck stops and rest areas where, somebody hits us while we're parked, or another truck trying to squeeze into another spot hits our mirror or rips the front of the truck off. And it's real easy to just get mad and say, oh, that guy that hit us is a bad driver. But you know what, when I watch these videos, as Adam, we have cameras in our trucks, I see the video of the truck stop and I'm like, well, how the heck are you supposed to navigate through this without hitting something? Like the folks that drove through there that day without hitting something should get some kind of recognition for it. So I'm 100% with you. Truck parking, that needs to really be at the forefront of, what this industry is pursuing in legislation. And I think there's been some successes and gains there, but how long does it take to build a rest area? It's not an overnight process. So this isn't a problem that's going to go away anytime soon. And it's funny that, Lucas kind of mentioned about, hey, at TCA, I met a company that kind of does this. Mm-hmm. I was going to tell the same story. This past year at TCA, I met a company that handles, does something with truck parking. And guess what? We get back to Boyle and, hey, we got to get these guys because they have a better mousetrap. So, big believer in, we're in such a weird time in the industry where there's all this technology and AI and just all these things that are just kind of prevalent. You can capture some of this stuff and bring the positives back home with you, right? So in an effort to reduce our risk exposure at truck stops, which shouldn't be a place where you're concerned about risk exposure, but it is now, isn't it? With, freight, cargo theft and the congestion and the accidents and the incidents. It's, highly recommend you go to one of these conferences and try to connect with some of these folks and try to drive down some of the problems that you're having in your fleet.
So 2 good success stories right there about, having a problem, going to these conferences and coming back with some sort of a solution. And maybe you don't come back with a solution, but you come back with an idea. And I always feel like good ideas fuel innovation. And when we have a big problem, eventually it's going to be solved. And I think, the government can assist all at once, but I think the private industry will probably find the best solution. And I'm excited to see it because it can't come any quicker. There's more people and more vehicles on our roads. And as you all know, our roads need a lot of work and they're not getting wider to handle congestion. Drive through any metropolitan area today and you'll see it. So, Mike, I do not want to drive out in Boston again. Nothing against Boston. I love it. My brother-in-law lives out there, but
I was about to say, it's funny to hear you and Lucas, out in the Midwest where you got all the room in the world. To someone like me, here in the Northeast, our roads are made for horses. And literally they were. And, I started my career as a driver when I was 21 and I learned to drive in Boston. That was where I cut my teeth, so to speak. So, I feel you. It's a challenge up here in the Northeast for sure.
Mike, I love the fact you brought up that you are a driver. You're a former driver, but you're a driver. Lucas, I know that you were a driver too. Can you tell a little bit about your experience driving and maybe you could probably pick 1,000 things, but maybe one big impactful thing that you've seen since you got out of the truck and started working in the office?
One of the huge things since I got out of the truck and into the office has been the video technology. The event recorders that people have in the trucks and everything. Back when I was driving, we didn't have anything like that. The safety director would call up and say, hey, you had a hard break. What was it all about? Oh, a deer ran out in front of me. And I'm in the middle of town. You always had some excuse of what happened, and it was never the driver's fault or anything. And now,
so it's safe to say there was no deer, Lucas.
Correct.
Confessing to the former safety director.
Correct.
Okay.
But this seemed that the driver always had an excuse for those hard breaks. It wasn't following distance. It wasn't in intention or anything like that. It was an animal ran out in front of me, or this guy brake checked me, or this or that. And now we've got that video that we can go back and look at what actually happened during that event and everything. And it's been a game changer when it comes to safety on the road. The video recorders honestly have made my job a lot easier, but a lot harder at the same time, because you've got so much data coming in now versus what it used to be.
That's seems to be the mantra of a lot of folks, that it's exposed a lot of things, but now it's exposed, right?
Right.
I knew this consultant in trucking, guy by the name of Jack Porter. Sure hope he's on, but if he's not, that's okay. Jack used to say, I don't care what the truth is, just tell me the truth. And
Yep.
That's what these cameras expose. Like back in the day, again, yeah, just looking at vehicle telematics, hard braking, things like that. That's kind of a mystery. And you could check a box and say, yeah, I talked to the driver, he said it was a deer jumped out, and that's that. Now with video telematics, we're expected to do more and more and more. So very good point, Lucas, and very good thing to bring up. So I have one more question for you, Lucas, and then I'm going to switch it over to Mike. So Lucas, with TCA, and I keep coming back to that just because, we're all members and we all like this organization. There are a lot of different programs. There's the Highway Angels program and there's the Safety Awards program, but there's also something called the TPP, or the Transportation Profitability Program, and also known as benchmarking. And I know that your fleet's a part of it. In 30 seconds or less, and I'm going to set my watch, can you tell us a little bit about the benchmarking program from your perspective?
The benchmarking program puts you in with a group of carriers that are doing the same thing that you're doing, but different lanes. And then you sit down and compare your different things that you're doing throughout. They meet on operational problems and everything. They meet on maintenance issues. They meet on safety issues. And it's a group of other carriers doing the same thing you are, putting their heads together, trying to solve a problem.
So it's about solving issues, talking to your peers. And I always felt your competition should be embraced. And like, you want good competition. You want folks that are going to put their best foot forward, do right by customers, because your reputation out there is also determined by your competition. When there's a truck crash, sometimes people don't always see the name of the truck on the side. So it just big truck equals bad crash. We don't want that to happen. So I think by benchmarking with your competition, and adhering to antitrust guidelines, I'm going to be very clear on that, because they would always have someone in the room making sure that there was no type of activity like that, that it was just the sharing of best practices. What can you do better? What can you do? Who made a mistake and now won't step in that same mistake? So thanks for doing that. So Mike, I'm going to bounce over to you. And I want to talk about technology and safety, something that you both have embraced. And Mike, I know you've embraced it very much. Can you talk about how AI is addressing some of the problems? We hear AI all the time. I've kind of got AI fatigue a little bit, but I'm going to ask the question, what are some of the ways that AI is addressing some of these problems that we're facing today in transportation?
Yeah, but that's a great question. And I think, AI, it's an exciting time to live in with this AI stuff. I mean, it really is. And you kind of, there's always that debate of, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And I kind of look at it like it's the modern day calculator. When calculators first came out, everybody thought this is going to make us all dumb. No one's going to know how to do math anymore. And that didn't really happen. What did it do? It enabled folks to do higher levels of mathematics, that they wouldn't have been able to do with a slide rule or an abacus or whatever the heck they were using before calculators, right? So I'm kind of an advocate for AI. What I've seen is a lot of analytics that can occur. Now, obviously, there's AI that's entered the industry in terms of like routing and those kind of things, right? Dispatch kind of applications. In the safety realm, and I think Netradyne has a really interesting feature with this. Like, whenever an incident occurs, sometimes finding that video of the incident, it's like finding a needle in the haystack.
Mm-hmm.
The driver may or may not know exactly what time something happened. There's a lot of, emotions and excitement, and, just stress that the driver is responsible for managing the scene of the accident along with doing the investigation. Right. So, there's a lot of pressure and stress on a driver there. So we're trying to find the video. In years past, I might have had to sat there for 2 hours watching, 1 minute long segments of video until I finally discover, this is where the incident occurred. Well, now there's a beautiful feature that Netradyne has. I can just type in, find the red car that hits the truck, and boom, there's the video. And I'm not sitting there watching 2 hours of video trying to find the needle in a haystack, right? So it's definitely made the job a little bit more efficient, or quite a bit more efficient for safety directors and the like. So. But there's that, and there's also just different functionality with AI that I've seen some other vendors that are using. I think it's here to stay. I think it's something that we're going to come to rely on. Just just like a smartphone. When a smartphone came out in 2004, 2005, how many people are out there buying flip phones these days, right? You can pretty much do everything you need to do in life on your phone. I got a feeling AI is going to kind of creep into human existence in much the same way. But it's exciting to see how it's doing it in the trucking industry currently, for sure.
Trucking industry is always kind of on that leading or bleeding edge with everything. And I think that we've been a great proving grounds to show what AI can do, and to also show, when I say trucking, maybe I should just say transportation in general, but trucking is near and dear to my heart, so I'm going to say trucking. So we've proven out some of these things that work very well with AI. Lucas, bouncing over to you, what do you see with AI? Like, what kind of problems are you solving? Besides the typical, video problems, maybe is there any other ways that you guys at your company are using AI?
We're using AI on the compliance side some also. I've got AI watching our due dates for CDL expirations, MVR expirations, MedCert expirations, and then the AI agent can actually reach out to the driver, request a new CDL copy and everything. Takes the low-hanging fruit off of my plate, being a small staff service that we are here at Grand Island Express. There's only 2 of us in our safety department, so that low-hanging fruit definitely can be taken care of by AI by doing that for us.
Wow. So like thinking about back in the day, having to look through your files, and whether or not they're paper files or you got it on an Excel spreadsheet or you've got electronic files, there's still something you have to track and something that you have to reach out to a driver. So if something is automated, and I would just say, it's probably got to be accurate data, because if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So, if you have accurate data in there, and hey, an AI agent calls the driver or sends them a note, says, hey, you got to get your CDL updated in 30 days. And with some of these over-the-road companies where drivers are out for 2 to 3 weeks, especially in the refrigerated market, those guys and gals stay out there a long time, not to mention detention that's going on. But that's really cool, Lucas. I mean, and I can see AI helping not only with some of the more complex things, but the simple, the mundane, the low-hanging fruit, as you put it. So very much appreciate that. I guess back to you, Mike. Do you think there's any misconceptions about AI and trucking safety that you would clear up if you could?
Well, I don't know if there's quite misconceptions yet. I think it's just more of a distrust, because people don't know exactly where this is going to go. And I think this is true whether we're talking about trucking or if we're talking about, if you got a kid that's in high school, AI is a problem, in case you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Kids writing reports in 2 seconds that, they should have spent 2 weeks researching, and then, another week typing it up and all that good stuff. So I think there's a bit of mistrust out there. And I think as time unfolds, it's either going to, something's got to give, right? Either people are going to start to embrace it or people are going to become more comfortable with it. I think there's definitely going to be, you're going to have to figure out the right applications, because AI isn't going to solve every problem in the world, nor should it.
No.
And when you're interacting with professional drivers, it's funny. I was actually just talking with Jane Jaswari from Carrier's Edge about this.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to lose that human touch, because that's something that, that's a retention tool in a lot of ways, right? But drivers know that, at Boyle Transportation, and I'm sure at Grand Island, drivers know, hey, people there know me and care about me, and there's a reason why I stay working for this company, right? Mm-hmm. And AI will never replace that, nor should it. Mm-hmm. So I think, as time progresses, there's going to be appropriate and, probably inappropriate uses of AI. And I think we're going to all kind of figure out where that goes together. But in terms of just, strictly the safety related stuff, like, I called out a nice feature that Netradyne just added. Man, that's awesome. You just saved me 3 hours, 2 hours of my day just by, incorporating AI into a video search. Is it best to have AI, reach out and call my drivers and ask them how they're doing? No, I want to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be a balance to figure out where this goes and where it should go.
I see, there was a lot of talk when self-driving vehicles came about and saying like, hey, it's going to be driverless trucks and we aren't going to see drivers in trucks. And I said, baloney, because, okay, we've had autopilot in airplanes for a long, long time. And the biggest change that I can see is that I remember way back in the 80s when I flew as a little kid, there were 3 people sitting up front. There were 2 pilots and a navigator. And now it seems like there's just 2 pilots. But thinking about that, okay, we have autopilot in those planes. They can take off, they can land, they can pretty much do everything, but they have 2 humans in there. And that human factor, that is something that cannot be replaced. And I'm saying it here. I mean, if I threw down a challenge, it would be, how could you replace that human factor, that human instinct? I don't think you can do that. So I always feel like there's going to be at least one person in that truck and maybe some AI assistance. But in order to make the thing work the best, you got to have humanity involved in it. So I appreciate all that. We did talk about safe parking, pilot programs, things like that. I guess driver retention, that's something we've talked about, something you both have mentioned. And I mean, there are so many different ways, so many different programs we can give to our drivers. We can give them more pay. We can give them increased programs, things like that. What are some creative ways, Lucas, that you see work with retaining drivers? And I mean, dare I say, just retaining employees in general, and include drivers in it. But, some retention things that you see right now that you really like, that you think work.
I'd say retention wise, a lot of it does vary from person to person. I mean, sometimes you're fighting a battle that you can't fight, and other times it's a simple battle that, this driver needs more home time, and it's somebody that's been out for 2-3 months, and all of a sudden he needs to be home every 2 to 3 weeks instead. That's something that you can easily listen to the driver, go back, fix their problem. Where, a lot of the time right now with our retention issues is I need to be home every night. Well, we're an OTR company, and that's the biggest thing that we're facing right now is I need to be home every night, or I want to be home every night, not necessarily need to be home every night, but I want to be home every night to be with my family. And that's completely understandable.
Mhm.
But that's a challenge that is harder to face because it's not just money that can solve that problem. It's not just changing one little thing. That would be changing your whole aspect of your transportation company, trying to go from OTR to local for everybody and everything. So it's definitely something that is out there and difficult, and it isn't a cookie cutter that solves the problem for retention.
So you said two things that stood out. Number one, it depends for retention. It depends on that person, right? You talked about a lot of the home time requirements and needs, and but you also said listen to the driver. And I found that if you took the time to listen, and I fell victim to just not listening from time to time, and I paid the price on that. But if you truly listen to a driver, and sometimes it's not the perfect fit, and sometimes it is best for folks to go their separate ways. I mean, we don't want to introduce people back into the industry simply arbitrarily. If it's just not going to work or someone's needs change over time, you got to roll with those punches. And if your business doesn't have 70 different types of driving positions, there's really not much you can do. Your company up front, your recruiters, I'm sure, tell folks exactly what you do, where you go, what you can expect for home time. And sometimes people make decisions flippantly, and then a few months later, after the honeymoon's over, they're like, wait a minute, I wanted to be home every night. Well, you knew what you bought. You knew where you were. You knew where you came. So sometimes those things can happen. I've seen them myself too, but I really love the fact that you said listen to the driver, and it depends, because we're all human, but we're all a little bit different. So same to you, Michael. Retention.
Yeah. So, retention is something obviously every trucking company is looking at, internally. So, at Boyle, we're really proud. Our retention number, we're at 25%. And that's actually, we actually.
Wait, is that turnover? Your retention
turnover, yeah. Sorry, I said that back. Yeah. We only keep 25 people.
Like, ooh, that's not that good, Mike. Come on now.
No, our turnover is at 25%. Historically, we like that a little bit lower. For a long time, we're in single digits, and then COVID happened, and it kind of peaked up a little bit, and it hasn't quite normalized again. One of the things that we found, and kind of to echo Lucas's point, it's that human interaction. And when we bring folks in for an orientation, whether they're office personnel or professional drivers that we're hiring, they have a meeting with either me or Rick Aronese, our general manager, and we ask the question, hey, what do you expect out of us at Boyle Transportation? And we write it up on the board, whatever they come up with, we're writing it down. And then, very rarely almost never, I should say, do you see anything that is a surprise, right? Drivers want to be respected. They want the company that cares about them, right? They want to be talked to in a professional manner, right? They want, a fair set of rules and expectations, right? And that's all reasonable stuff. And then we immediately follow that up with, okay, well, from your perspective as drivers, what do you think the company should expect from you? And we go through the whole thing, right? You should expect us to be, polite and professional and courteous and, mutual respect and all these things. And we kind of start from this, we build something together right in the first 30 minutes that you've worked for the company, right? We have a pretty clear set of guidelines of, what you expect out of me as your employer and what I should expect out of you as our professional driver. And we try to make sure that we adhere to that all throughout that relationship. And I believe that, drivers, when you engage them in that way and, you kind of give that mutual respect, I think that's a real advantage when it comes to retention and keeping the drivers that you've trained and invested in keeping them working for your company for a long period of time. Because that's what we all want.
Awesome. So I'm being told that we might have a question from the audience, and I'm going to highlight it from Marissa. Do you think AI will help newer drivers be safer? And Marissa, thank you so much for your question. I don't know, guys, what do you think?
I think, and I don't know if this necessarily qualifies as quote unquote AI, but I think that's already happening with ADAS. I think ADAS is definitely a tool. I'm not going to admit to anything here in a public forum, but it's definitely a tool that I wish I had when I was a new driver, and it would have saved me a whole lot of bumps and dings that happened, right? So, things like collision mitigation and automatic emergency braking, blind spot warning systems, lane departure warning systems. These are all tools that help all drivers of all skill levels, but I think definitely are going to help newer drivers. These are things that didn't exist when I started driving 24 years ago or whatever it was. Whether that turns into something more powerful, I think we're already kind of seeing that. Like, our camera system that we have, in the truck, it provides audible alerts to our driver if they're going over the speed limit, or if they're tailgating or driving too close to the vehicle in front of them. And that's also a measure of AI, right? So these are all tools that are pretty commonplace in practice amongst kind of your forward-leaning fleets that are already making a big difference in terms of helping newer drivers and veteran drivers on the same path.
Lucas.
Mike did a really good job of covering that. I agree with him. And like I said, one of the ways I'm using AI is in the compliance side. So it'll definitely make them more compliant through the new drivers and everything. But I'm with Mike. It's already happening with the AI cameras, with the automatic braking systems, everything like that. So
appreciate it. That was a great question. Again, thanks to our audience there. I'm going to flip back to some things with retention. And this is a question I kind of struggle with how I'm going to say this, but I'm just going to say it. How can you tell with a driver when it's time to part ways? Like there's a lot of mistakes that can be made, and people are human. And there's mistakes that, even though they're big, sometimes they're forgivable. But when do you think it's time to part ways with a driver, our most valuable asset? When does that happen? And Mike, I'll throw it to you first.
Oof, that's a really tough question. Because I'll tell you what, at my core, I always feel like if we had to terminate a driver, somehow I failed. And that's not always true, and I recognize that, but that's kind of the feeling that I get in my chest when we talk about that, right?
Yes.
So, how do we go about addressing that? Well, I mean, I try to be proactive to make sure that I don't have to get to where I have that feeling in my chest. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes it comes to that. I take a look at the level of commitment. Is this a driver that really has a commitment to doing things right, and maybe they're just lacking a certain tool or a skill set or something that we can develop and build on? And to your point, right, sometimes might be something that was a big deal, but it can be forgivable if that person has the right mindset about it. I always look for those folks that try to that fall into that like constant learner bucket. I always say, hey, the day you feel like you've learned everything in this industry, it's time to retire, because there's no place for you now, right? We live in this constantly changing, evolving world of technology and regulations and hot button topics. There's always something to learn. So if you're someone that has that right mindset, you're a learner. Maybe we can learn from this bad thing that happened or whatever, and kind of build you into the next best professional driver, right? But yeah, it's always a sad day when you have to throw in the towel with somebody, and it can happen for a number of reasons. If I've encountered folks, not necessarily here at Boyle Transportation, but at other jobs that I've had in the past, where I'm like, oh my goodness, like how did these folks get through the door on the application, and the company saddled with them, and the company doesn't do well in the long run with that kind of a workforce. So it's an unfortunate piece of business that we all have to deal with from time to time.
Lucas, any telltale signs where it's time to part ways?
Accountability. If the driver accepts accountability and comes to me with a logical reason on what happened, what am I going to do next time to prevent this from happening, then we can usually continue on. But if the driver comes in, and I've actually had this exact example happened to me. I had a driver come in the office one day, and I looked at the trailer as it's pulling in the yard, and I've got a dolly leg folded up underneath of the trailer. And I went up to the driver, and I'm like, what happened here? Well, what do you mean what happened? You just took a dolly leg and folded it up underneath the trailer. If you don't know what happened, then you probably shouldn't be out there driving a rig like that and everything. And so it boils down to accountability for me and everything. If they're accountable for their actions and have a way to solve that from happening again, then we'll retain them. If they're not going to be accountable for their actions and say, I have no idea, or I didn't do it, and it's plain that they did, then it's time to move on and let them drive for somebody else.
Yeah, or exit the industry.
Exit the industry completely is right.
I mean, I saw a lot. You said accountability, Mike. You said some awesome things. Attitude drives the truck, and you know, that attitude of accountability, that attitude that there's always something more to learn. You can see it. And even when there is, you know, like an overturned vehicle, that can be a bad collision, you know, one vehicle collision. And a lot of companies will just say, that's it, we're done. But I've seen situations where people have taken ownership from those types of situations. They've learned from it and have become really, really excellent drivers after making one of those mistakes. Luckily, with no one being hurt. And that's the whole thing. You know, the tendency when someone gets hurt, our initial knee-jerk reaction is like, well, this driver can't be with us anymore. You know, we're going to get sued, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. And, you know, sometimes it's okay to retain that driver who has that good attitude, that admits their mistake and wants to move past it and into the next phase of their career, which is ownership, accountability, and becoming an even better driver. So I really appreciate that. I've experienced the exact thing that you described, although it wasn't a dolly leg. It was the whole side of the trailer was just ripped open with yellow paint. Someone skinned a bollard and forgot about it. So yeah, we've seen things like that. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to move to close. So I'm going to start with you, Michael. Pretend you have a magic wand in your hand and you could just wave it to fix one problem in the trucking industry. Ooh. What would you fix?
Oh, that's a tough one. Fix any one problem in the trucking industry. Ooh. You know, I'll tell you what, I wish that there was, here's my answer. My answer is I wish there was I would create a better way to get people into this career path, because I feel like historically, this is something that as an industry, we've done a horrible job of, is selling ourselves to the next generation. You know, look, I'll tell you what, I became a truck driver when I was a kid. I loved Smokey and the Bandit. I thought that was the coolest darn thing I've ever seen. And it made me love trucks. I was the kid in the back seat going like this, trying to get the trucker to blow the horn. I just worshiped trucks as a kid. I became a truck driver. That kind of went away. And, you know, then we went through we stopped glamorizing the cowboy era of trucking. And we kind of started, talking about how bad it was. Right. And that's all we talked about for decades. And as a result, do you see any kids out there, dying to be truck drivers these days? No. And I feel like if there was something I had a magic wand I could wave, it would be to kind of offer, give people a glimpse or make it easier for folks to enter this industry so they can see what this industry provides. Because I can tell you, you can earn a darn good living and get to do some really cool stuff and get a lot of life experience that you can't get in any other career path that's out there.
That's a great answer. And I remember those days of, the trucker being the American hero, and that did go away. And I'm kind of sad about it because I can remember always doing this to the truckers.
It came back during COVID.
Yes.
And we got to hold on to that and make sure we keep bringing that up, that it came back during COVID. Everybody was thanking a trucker every damn day of the week because they depended on a trucker to live.
That's right.
We can't let people forget that that's the reality.
So, Lucas, same tough question to you. What are your thoughts?
I think it'd be just general public knowledge of trucking in general. People don't realize the regulations that we have and that we abide by, and the hours of service and everything. And then you've got the size of the vehicle and how the weight of the vehicle makes it so it's harder for us to brake and give us more room, and we need wider turns. Just not giving the public knowledge on our industry more into it.
So more public education, and I know just firsthand, you grew up in a rural environment. I did too. It seemed like there was like an easier exposure to trucking because a lot of farmers had to, truck their grain into town, things like that. So the rural folks, at least back when I was growing up, tended to have a little bit more of knowledge of these large pieces of equipment. And in urban environments, other than kind of seeing them around you on the road, the education isn't there. So I feel like we could take both of what you're saying, because by educating the public and the general population, we could create more opportunities for the drivers. So we could solve Lucas's problem, we could solve Michael's problem, and we just created an industry boon right there. And now it's up to us to try to make those types of things happen. Gentlemen, it's been amazing talking to both of you. I am going to close out this session with something that I used to do at work all the time. When times were tough, things were difficult, I always like to break the tension with a dad joke. So I'm going to tell a dad joke right now. What do you call a belt made of watches? Give up? It's a waste of time. But you know what's not a waste of time? This podcast. This was amazing. Guys, it's been real. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in person. Take care.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks,
everyone.
Adam.
Thanks for joining.